What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I am back with yet another album review. So in terms of releases this week, it was, arguably kind of slow. In terms of, everything else going on in the world, arguably chaotic. Actually, fuck arguably. It's just nuts out there. And yeah, that's why I'm down here going over music, because I'd much rather do that than watch the news. Anyway, I was still looking for something to go over for a fourth review, and, kind of just scouring through the release schedules and the archives and various sites, I came across one that it was hard for me to resist once I saw the band's name, and even harder for me to resist when I heard the album itself. So today we are going over the latest offering from Deathgoat, Dragged into Realms Below. This also comes out on the 13th of June on Extreme Music. This band formed in Finland in 2015. This is their second album overall. First I've ever seen or heard of them. I'm familiar with a wide array of different goat bands. Goat, Whore, Archgoat, Weregoat. Metal loves goats. That's pretty much it. But I was unfamiliar with this particular goat, but this band has a very familiar sound. And it's kind of interesting because, I said this band formed in Finland. And I didn't lead on to the fact that it's death metal, but it 100% is. But it's not the Finnish death metal that you would expect. This is Finnish HM2 death metal. Now, I'm reasonably sure there are probably a whole bunch of different, Finnish bands that emulate the whole Swedish buzzsaw sound, but I've only heard of one other band that has done this so far. It was a band I went over a while ago in a collection update called Corpsatory. Pretty much sounded like Bloodbath and, Dismember and Entombed and other bands that I will definitely bring up to compare to this one. Both that band and the one I'm covering sound very much from Stockholm. I probably should have made note of what city they're from and see if it was anywhere close to Sweden in terms of the border and such. But honestly, if I did, I would probably attempt to say it and royally screw it up because Finnish is next to impossible to say right. Unless you're from Finland, then you're totally used to that word jumble fucking pollinated with umlauts that I just struggle with. But yeah, I thought this was kind of interesting because Finland is known for having its own distinct death metal sound, just as Sweden is known for that too. And, there have been some other bands that have kind of been outside of the whole Finnish spectrum in terms of Finnish death metal. Torture Killer and Guts definitely have more old school US death metal tropes to them. So I thought this one would be just an interesting one to go over. That, and I'm a giant HM2 slut. That's been established multiple times before, and I'll be honest, this kind of checks off everything that I love about HM2 death metal. First things first, the tone. The tone is essential. While it doesn't kick into high gear right away, you have an opening suite. It's not really an intro, it's an opening instrumental with some samples in it. Alkalima, not sure what that means, but it's very atmospheric. You get some samples kind of peppered in there, and it's a kind of a slow build. You get these isolated, very doomy guitars, and then when it thunders in, man, it sounds absolutely wonderful. The guitar tone is monstrously heavy. You get that classic HM2 buzzsaw sizzle. Good amount of bass in the mix. The drums are nice and punchy. It's plodding, it's moody, it's got a nasty riff to it. It gets a little bit more atmospheric towards the end, and then it gets right into pestilent retribution, where this thing just takes off left-hand path, like an ever-flowing stream. Hefty, giant riffs. Again, the HM2 tone is in full swing. D beats, a lot more blast beats than I was actually expecting. This is, kind of a style where blast beats are definitely welcome, but you don't hear them a lot in terms of bands that kind of, want to go after that more classic HM2 sound. It's more like the Bloodbath sound, I guess, which, they're close, but Bloodbath definitely has a more modern appeal to it. This kind of works a nice balance between kind of the old school vibe with the D beats and just nasty chuggy riffs, and Bloodbath's more blasty, slightly more technical style. Most of these songs, very meat and potatoes, very straightforward. They don't waste any time getting down to what I see as the important parts of this style. Get down to the riffs, get down to the tremolos, the big chuggy grooves, squealing dive bomb laden leads. They're good about laying on solid riffs, but it's not so repetitious where they just kind of stick to them and really don't do much outside of them. There are some really solid dynamics in terms of transitions and riff changes. Songs like Monoxide, Dying to be Dead, there's some really good trade-offs in terms of blast beats to D beats to these more groove-laden sections that almost kind of get a little bit doomy. It's not bereft of melody either. It frequently has moments where it gets into these like sinister, haunting melodies. Nothing too like super melodic, like, definitely not like an ever-flowing stream in that regard where they have those like frequent Iron Maiden-esque harmonies. They're definitely more haunting and sinister sounding. Like this wants to sound absolutely just gross and filthy. And I can see trying to stay away from anything like, super melodic to kind of keep it away from anything around like melodeath. Like this is, again, just straight up old school Swedish death metal from Finland. The guitar work is front and center. And, when it comes down to HM2 death metal, that's generally the first thing I really analyze. And the guitar work in here is awesome. The HM2 buzzsaw tone is one of those tones where you can kind of just let the tone do the work. Sometimes it doesn't even matter the chords you're hitting, the fact that you're hitting them and letting them ring out, or you're doing like some slow plodding chugging or fast tremolos. It really doesn't matter because the tone itself is just so grisly, so heavy. It makes everything sound visceral and biting and snarly. You could play fucking Green Day songs with an HM2 tone, and honestly, I probably fucking like them. There's gotta be like a YouTube cover of that kind of shit out there. I don't know. And while I'd say there's like nothing like revolutionary or truly like outside of the box in terms of this album, there are some like fun moments where they kind of break it up a little bit. Flashback Psychosis in particular is a thrashy number. Like the riffs for the most part of that song are hefty machine gun fire riffs. It almost sounds like an HM2 version of Sodom. It does break it down and get a little bit groovier, but it returns to that kind of like visceral thrashy bite. And most of the songs, when they're going fast, that's a good chunk of them, are very explosive. Like in your face, blast beats, turnovers, galloping D beats, but it's really well paced. And again, they kind of know when to like let off the gas on certain parts. Like Dying to Be Dead comes in blasty as hell, tremolo harmonies. It's just vicious. But when it gets down to the verses, it transitions into this nice like galloped chug. It's the right kind of letting off the gas because you're still kind of, playing something super heavy. It's really catchy, but the energy remains intact, and they're going to speed right back up because, well, they do. Vocally, I thought this was kind of interesting because this doesn't have like that more kind of like classic death metal growl that you would hear in a lot of like classic Swedish death metal. This has more like deep guttural vocals. And for me, that kind of gave this whole album a little bit of like a Vomitory vibe. They aren't as blasty as Vomitory. Like there's definitely more groove laden pockets on here, but vocally, it has, I wouldn't call it like a flat out like brutal death metal growl, but it's much lower. You do get some moments where there's some backup vocals that are like, a little bit higher and a little bit raspier. It does break up kind of the monotony of the delivery because he kind of stays in that low register the entire time. But overall it works. It kind of makes the album sound a little bit grimier. And there's not a lot of like additional atmosphere on here. Like you have a couple of moments here and there where you get like some samples and a little bit of ambiance to kind of set the mood, like namely the opening track. Clinically Undead opens up with a like really creepy drum and bass with some samples underneath. Again, I don't know what they're saying. I think it's in English though. It did not sound like it was Finnish or Swedish or any other language I couldn't speak or decipher. I heard English words. It's kind of crackly. It sounds like it's being like, played over an old transistor radio. And as the sample goes on and starts to fade out, you start hearing the main melody kind of come up in a cleaner tone. In fact, I think it's the only time in here I heard a clean tone at all. So unlike a lot of songs in here, there is a good build in terms of tension and atmosphere there. And eventually you get right back down to the nasty, chuggy riffs because that's every track on here. Another spot of atmosphere, and it was kind of weird because it came out of nowhere, was the end of Monoxide. That song is blistering, it's heavy, really cool crawling riffs in the beginning. It's a very catchy little tag that's on the main riff there, but the whole song just chugs along violently, just like I like it. And then at the end, you get this weird, like last gasp, like out of nowhere, you just get the like that, and then it just cuts off. Maybe that's them choking on monoxide or whatever, but I don't know. It was just kind of creepy and out of nowhere. In terms of any negatives on here, I mean, I'd be kind of hard pressed to find any because this is a style that I absolutely love. And it's one of those, where if you hear it done well, you know it. You feel it. The energy's there. You're not expecting them to go off the reservation and really kind of like, wow you with like, oh, this is just some technical proggy stuff we peppered in here because we wanted to be different than other HM2 death metal bands. That's really never the thing. The whole HM2 sound is you want to sound like those classic bands and kind of put your own slight spin on it. But at the same time, this is just a style that is just deeply rooted in, just like a very classic sound. Like I kind of just want HM2 death metal. And that's exactly what I got here. Yeah, this doesn't do anything to really like reinvent the style at all, but it's just riffy fun. And like there's a serious amount of like self-aware humor on here. Like, I mean, the song titles are, you know, pretty like over the top and ridiculous. Dying to be Dead, Clinically Undead, Compulsive Cannibalism. This band knows what they're about. This whole album is like a night of watching, you know, direct-to-video VHS horror, eating pizza, and drinking beer with your friends. In fact, I would say throw this album on while doing that, turn down the volume on the VHS horror movies, because, I mean, if you're watching some direct-to-video shit that I used to rent, like The Sleeping Car or Deathbed, yes, those are real movies. There's a good chance you didn't rent them for the plot or the storyline or any of the fucking dialogue. You just wanted to see some ridiculously over-the-top, gory shit. And what better way to complement that than with some over-the-top, gory, ridiculous death metal? So overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars. This was a pure fun release, and honestly, as far as like, you know, knowing I would like this was a fucking layup. It really was. The production here is fantastic. It has that old school Swedish sound. The guitar tone, of course, is amazing. Songwriting is very straightforward, very on the nose, but it's energetic. There isn't really a section on here where I felt like there was a lull in energy at all. Great riffs, great drum work. Dig pretty much everything about this. If you're a longtime fan of bands like Entomb, Dismember, Bloodbath, Lick, if you loved the last Lick album as much as we did, which we fucking love that album, then you're probably going to dig the shit out of this, so definitely check this one out. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They were only 99 cents, and our lone perk is doing a members-only live stream, which we will do at some point. Probably around the middle of this month. We just got to figure out a time for it. Not sure what we're going to talk about, but I'm sure it will devolve into conversations about farting, pooping, and various other sophomoric things that we're known for. Either way, membership is the main way to support the channel if you would like to help us out. There's also, again, the join button down below if you'd like to become a member and chat with us online and get a little star next to your name. I think that's pretty cool. But just know that we appreciate the shit out of you guys, whether you become a member or not. This has, again, become like one of the most fun things I think I've done in my life, and that in a way still kind of sounds a little sad, but honestly I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. The comments, the interaction, all that, I still am very much in love with, you know, doing the whole YouTube thing, and you guys are large in part one of the main reasons. So tons of content coming in the future. I did, again, all these solo reviews, so the other guys have some time to work on some, you know, important videos coming up, so hopefully that all pans out. Outside of that, I got a lot of collection updates I'm working on. Gonna work on some other stuff too, as far as like some more topical stuff too. But yeah, tons of content coming in the future. So one more big thank you, because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.